Norcross, Georgia, July 26, 2022. A warm evening in a quiet suburb, 16-year-old Susana Morales sends a text to her mom. "I'm on my way home." But Susana never walks through that door. What follows is a family's nightmare, a town's growing unease, and the unraveling of a case that leads straight into the dark heart of power. This is the story of Susana Morales, a young girl who vanished without a trace, and whose truth would shake the very system meant to protect her. It started out like any other teenage summer night. Susana hanging with friends, laughter, pictures, TikToks. Then, a text from mom, "Come home, mija," and Susana left, alone. What was supposed to be a 10-minute walk turned into a 10-month mystery. Her phone pinged one final time. Off Singleton Road, then silence. But technology never lies. That last signal showed something chilling. Susana had stopped walking. She was moving, at 40 miles per hour. The GPS data told a terrifying truth. 1 minute, Susana's walking. The next, she's speeding away in a vehicle. She never answered another text. Her phone buzzed one last time, and then went dark. Dead battery? Or something? Far more sinister? And as her signal disappeared, so did she. She was a sister, a daughter, a dreamer. Susana Morales lit up rooms with her smile and lived for music. She wanted to be a singer, to take care of her mom, to dance under stage lights, not vanish into the shadows. She wasn't a runaway. She wasn't careless. She was 16, and she deserved a future. Within hours, panic turned into search. Police, drones, dogs, but no Susana. Not a sock, not a shoe, not a phone. It was as if the forest had swallowed her whole. One officer whispered it under his breath. "She's gone off the grid." But what kind of force makes a teenager vanish? They say if you don't find a missing person in the first 48 hours, your chances of finding them alive are cut in half. Detectives worked day and night. They interviewed friends, neighbors. They traced her route again and again. But every lead hit a wall. It wasn't just that Susana was missing. It was that she had vanished, as if someone had made sure she wouldn't be found.
Susana was with, we made it a point to go out and interview them in detail.
She ever ran away before?
Was she acting any different or unusual, or?
No, she was just act like everything was just cool.
Every door was a question. Did you see her? Was she here? One neighbor thought she heard something. Another saw a car speed off. And then there was the security camera, capturing Susana, walking for the very last time. No screams, no chase, just quiet, and then nothing. Then came the rumor. A red-haired girl, seen near Susana, tagged in a post. Was she a friend, a stranger, or a distraction? The more police questioned teens, the more confusion spread. Every story had a new version, and everyone had something to hide. 6 months, no phone, no sign, until a man, wandering off Highway 316, stumbled on something. Bones, scattered, weathered, no clothes, no wallet, just silence and death. The bones were young, 17 maybe, fingernails with black polish, teeth, some filled, some missing. The match wasn't instant, but when they found the dental records and saw tooth number 14 with the same silver cap, the truth hit like a train. This wasn't a runaway. This was Susana Morales, and she was dead. 30 yards from where Susana's bones lay, something else was hiding in the grass. A gun, dirt-stained, abandoned, but not forgotten. It had a name, a serial number, and that number told detectives this was no random weapon. It was reported stolen. One day after Susana disappeared from the same apartment complex where she was last seen alive. His name was Miles Bryant, 22 years old, courtesy officer. He lived and worked at Windcake Village, the last place Susana Morales was ever seen. And the gun? It was his. Reported stolen, just hours after she vanished. He said it was taken from his car, but something didn't add up. Because who reports a stolen gun, but doesn't care if it's found? He wasn't a stranger to suspicion. In 2018, a woman said she woke to the sound of her bedroom window creaking open. Outside, where was her neighbor, Miles Bryant. He said he just came to ask about homework. 5 months before Susana went missing, he allegedly tried to break into another woman's home. Face covered, hood up. She told police, but no charges were filed. A system missed him. A predator slipped through. Detectives got a warrant for Bryant's phone. And what they saw, that made their blood run cold. At the exact time Susana vanished, his phone was there. At 1 a.m., 3 hours after she went missing, he was deep in the woods, where her body was found, where his gun was dropped. The phone never lies. They brought him in, not as a suspect, but as a witness. At first, Miles Bryant was calm, cool, joking, but as questions got sharper, his answers cracked. He claimed he was driving, that his girlfriend had chased him, that he never left the road. But the phone said otherwise, and his heartbeat wasn't lying either. The FBI had the evidence, a motive, a poison, a body. But there was one thing they didn't have, a suspect, because Yazid Essa was protected by a wall of international law. Lebanon didn't extradite its citizens. And Yazid, he had a Lebanese passport and a lifetime of freedom. Rosie was 6 feet under. He was 6,000 miles away, untouchable. America wasn't done. The Department of Justice turned up the heat. Senators called it a disgrace. FBI agents flew to Lebanon. They met with judges, ministers, ambassadors. They said, "We don't care if he's Lebanese. He murdered an American woman." But Lebanon wouldn't budge. To them, he was one of their own. And America was just a voice yelling across the sea. While governments argued, Rosie's children grew up without a mother. Birthdays passed, holidays came and went, and still, no justice. Her brother Daniel lit candles every year. He promised her 2 kids. One day we'll get him back. But promises don't bring back mothers. And justice delayed can sometimes feel like justice denied. He'd played it perfectly for months. No bank accounts, no credit cards, just cash, charm, and silence. But arrogance makes men sloppy. One call to the wrong person, one insult to the wrong ally, and suddenly someone flipped. A Lebanese informant called the police. "I know where he is, and I'll tell you, for the right price." It was the one mistake Yazid Essa didn't plan for. On October 7th, 2006, Yazid Essa's luck finally ran out. Lebanese police, tipped off and armed with U.S. pressure, moved in. No sirens, no warning, just a knock. And then, handcuffs. He said nothing, didn't struggle, didn't blink. But deep down he knew his time in paradise had ended, and the next chapter would be written in chains. When a protector becomes a predator, the system is forced to look inward. Miles Bryant's arrest wasn't just shocking, it was radioactive. Inside the Doraville Police Department, files were reopened, procedures were rewritten, and officers, good officers, asked themselves, how did we miss this? How did we let him in? In Georgia, across the country, mothers and daughters stood together. Not just for her, but for all the girls who vanished and were never found. They marched, they shouted, they named names, and they reminded the world that silence has never saved anyone. The signs were there, a trespassing charge, a harassment complaint, a woman who said she woke to find him at her window. But time and time again, his badge outshined his behavior. The system didn't break. It blinked, and in that blink, a girl disappeared. Susana Morales never made it to her 17th birthday, but her story became a lesson, a warning, a call to every girl who's ever felt unsafe walking home. In classrooms, they say her name. In self-defense workshops, they carry her memory. And in every girl who chooses to speak up, Susana's voice lives on. What if she had taken a different route? What if the system had caught him sooner? What if someone, anyone, had stopped him? What ifs can't bring her back? But they haunt the nights of those who tried. Because Susana Morales didn't just die, she was taken. And now her story belongs to all of us. To remember, to carry, and to promise. We'll do better. The cameras left, the crowd thinned, but the family stayed behind. Not in the courthouse, in the silence. Because even when the system works, it cannot erase a loss this deep. Guilt was proven. Justice delivered. But what do you do with justice when your daughter never comes home? Susana didn't know she would become a symbol, but the girls who watched her story unfold didn't forget. They walked in her footsteps but refused to walk in her silence. They spoke up, held each other tighter, asked questions that adults were too afraid to ask, because Susana wasn't just mourned, she was mobilized. This wasn't the first time. There were calls, reports, allegations that were shrugged off because he wore a uniform. The signs were there, but when authority protects itself, girls pay the price, and in this case, one girl paid everything. Time moved on, but her name never faded on murals, on laws, on the lips of every girl who chooses not to walk alone. They say darkness wins when good people do nothing. But in Norcross, a girl went missing, and a community found its voice. She is gone, but her light stayed. The trial was over, but the reckoning had just begun. Miles Bryant wasn't just a criminal, he was a cop, and that shook the ground beneath every department across the country. How did he pass the background checks? Why were complaints buried? The badge is supposed to protect, but when it shields the wrong man, the system becomes the accomplice. He was trained to spot danger. Instead, he became it. He watched her, followed her, and when the time came, he acted. Miles Bryant's profile read like a storm warning. Narcissism, obsession, boundary violations. But the signs weren't just missed, they were dismissed, and Susana paid the price. Susana was one girl, but her story became many. Girls in other cities, other states, other systems that didn't listen fast enough. True crime podcasts lit up. TikTok turned her face into a movement. Because deep down, every young woman knew, it could have been me. Out of grief came education. Out of silence came voice. Schools across Georgia began teaching more than math. They taught girls how to speak up, how to fight back, how to leave a party with a plan, and come home with their life. We shouldn't have to teach them these things, but until the world changes, we do. We told her story in 40 parts, but for her family, the chapter never ends. The door remains cracked open. The chair at dinner stays empty. And every night, a mother whispers a name into the dark, hoping it echoes into something brighter. Susana Morales is gone, but not lost, not forgotten, because now she belongs to all of us. On February 24th, 2005, Rosemary Essa left her house like any other day, a devoted wife, a mother of two, a woman simply heading to the movies with her sister. She never arrived. Just 10 minutes after she left her driveway, she was found slumped over her steering wheel, vomiting, struggling to breathe. Her eyes wide open, locked in the silent terror. Paramedics rushed to the scene, but this wasn't a crash that killed her. There were no broken bones, no trauma. What happened to Rosemary Essa wasn't fate. It was something far darker. Inside Hillcrest Hospital, the ER team fought to save her, a healthy 38-year-old woman, now barely clinging to life. She wasn't bleeding. There was no head trauma. But her heart, it was stuttering, failing. Her breathing was shallow. Her pupils dilated. They pumped her with epinephrine, inserted tubes. Nothing worked. It was as if her body had decided to shut down, all at once. Doctors were left with one terrifying question. How does a woman with no injuries just die? While Rosie's heart was failing in the ER, her husband, Dr. Yezid Essa, waited outside, not crying, not pacing, just still. Then came the text, sent to friends, family, colleagues. I just wanted to let you know that Rosie died yesterday in a minor car accident. She will be missed. No tears, no exclamation marks, no disbelief. The calmness wasn't concern, it was calculation. And it was the first crack in the mask of a man who had spent his life pretending to be perfect. Hours before she died, Yezid handed Rosie a pill. It's just calcium, he said. Good for your bones. She smiled, swallowed it, kissed the kids, and left. Then a few minutes later, she called her best friend Ava. I feel like crap, she said. She never finished the sentence. Ava never heard her voice again. That pill was no vitamin. It was a time bomb. The detectives found the bottle in the kitchen, exactly where Yezid had left it. At first glance, everything looked fine, but under the microscope, the truth surfaced like a monster from the dark. 9 of the pill were tampered with. The powder inside wasn't calcium, it was cyanide, a poison so lethal that just a few milligrams can shut down the human body in seconds. Rosie never stood a chance, and now it was murder. February 24th, 2005, Rosie was late for the movie. She kissed her children, thanked her husband for staying home, and left. In her rearview mirror, the perfect suburban dream faded. Inside, Yezid Essa watched TV with the kids. His face betrayed nothing. No guilt, no fear, because he already knew. Rosie would never come home. She called her best friend. Avenue, just a quick check-in before the movie. But this call turned into a haunting memory. "I feel like crap," Rosie said. "I just feel horrible." Then, silence. No crash, no scream, just dead air. And Ava's heart sank. She didn't know it yet, but those would be the last words she'd ever hear from her friend. To bystanders, it looked like a routine fender bender. But when first responders opened the door, they found something far more sinister. Rosie was convulsing, vomiting violently. Her eyes stared at nothing, frozen in pain. And yet, her car was intact. The airbags hadn't deployed. No bruises, no blood. It was never the accident. It was what was already inside her, eating her alive. A second toxicology screen changed everything. 9.1 milligrams of cyanide per liter, 3 times the lethal dose. Enough to kill Rosie within minutes. The kind of poison you don't find by accident. The kind you have to look for. Someone planned this. Someone mixed it. Someone gave it to her. And that someone was already gone. The night after Rosie died, Yezid handed his children to a family member. "I'll be back Monday," he said. But Monday came and went. No calls, no return. Just a voicemail about a fake car accident in North Carolina. And then, silence. What no one knew was that Yezid had already crossed the border. Detroit to Windsor, then to Toronto, Cyprus, and finally, Beirut. He didn't just disappear. He vanished with a plan. He didn't just run. He vanished, like smoke. From Cleveland to Detroit, from Detroit to Canada, then Cyprus, and finally Beirut. In 48 hours, Yezid Essa went from grieving husband to international fugitive. And he didn't flinch, because he knew something the cops didn't. Lebanon didn't extradite its citizens, and Yezid Essa had dual citizenship. And the closer investigators looked, the uglier the truth became. Yazid had been living a double life, another apartment, another woman, another version of himself, one without a wife or children. He told mistresses he was single, told his wife he loved her, told his friends nothing at all. This wasn't just infidelity, it was identity murder, because while he was charming the world, he was planning her death. Weeks after Rosie's death, Ava received an anonymous email. No greeting, no signature, just one line. She was murdered by her husband. He poisoned her. At first, she didn't believe it, but then the pieces started falling into place. The calm text, the pill, the way he vanished like a ghost. Ava took the email to police, and just like that, the case cracked wide open. He thought he'd vanished, but no one vanishes forever. The FBI issued an Interpol red notice. Yazid Essa was now an international fugitive. Agents traced calls, emails. They followed the money, and it led them to one place, Beirut. He wasn't hiding in the shadows. He was living in plain sight, open, confident, and still untouchable. While Rosie's family mourned, her killer thrived. Yazid lived like royalty in Beirut. Private condo, luxury cars. He even started dating again, openly. And the worst part? There was nothing the FBI could do, because Lebanon wouldn't send him back. He had killed, he had fled, and for a while, he had won. The FBI had the evidence, a motive, a poison, a body. But there was one thing they didn't have, a suspect, because Yazid Essa was protected by a wall of international law. Lebanon didn't extradite its citizens. And Yazid? He had a Lebanese passport and a lifetime of freedom. Rosie was 6 feet under. He was 6,000 miles away, untouchable. America wasn't done. The Department of Justice turned up the heat. Senators called it a disgrace. FBI agents flew to Lebanon. They met with judges, ministers, ambassadors. They said, "We don't care if he's Lebanese. He murdered an American woman." But Lebanon wouldn't budge. To them, he was one of their own, and America was just a voice yelling across the sea. While governments argued, Rosie's children grew up without a mother. Birthdays passed, holidays came and went, and still no justice. Her brother Daniel lit candles every year. He promised her 2 kids. One day we'll get him back. But promises don't bring back mothers. Injustice delayed can sometimes feel like justice denied. He'd played it perfectly for months. No bank accounts, no credit cards, just cash, charm, and silence. But arrogance makes men sloppy. One call to the wrong person, one insult to the wrong ally, and suddenly someone flipped. A Lebanese informant called the police. "I know where he is, and I'll tell you, for the right price." It was the one mistake Yazid Essa didn't plan for. On October 7th, 2006, Yazid Essa's luck finally ran out. Lebanese police, tipped off and armed with U.S. pressure, moved in. No sirens, no warning. Just a knock. And then, handcuffs. He said nothing. Didn't struggle. Didn't blink. But deep down, he knew. His time in paradise had ended, and the next chapter would be written in chains. They had him. But holding a killer wasn't the same as bringing him home. Lebanon had no extradition treaty with the U.S. for capital crimes, and aggravated murder could mean the death penalty. If America wanted Yazid back, they had to make a promise. A dark, ironic promise: we won't kill the man who killed her. Because justice sometimes requires compromise. For nearly 3 years he waited. In a Lebanese jail, no trial, no resolution. He had a bed, a window, and a name he couldn't use. Outside, Rosie's family waited too. Every phone call a maybe. Every letter, another delay. But the FBI never stopped pushing, and finally, in 2009, the door began to open. In exchange for sparing his life, the U.S. was granted his body. No death penalty, no quick end, but a promise that he would stand before an American court. In January 2009, he boarded a plane in silence, from Lebanon to Cyprus, then to New York, and finally, Cleveland, the city he ran from, the courtroom he couldn't avoid, the reckoning he couldn't escape. When he entered the courtroom, he looked nothing like the charming doctor who once smiled on holiday cards. His hair grayer, his eyes colder, his silence louder. For the first time, Rosie's family saw him in chains, and for the first time, he had to listen. The case was no longer just local, it was global. News crews lined up outside, social media lit up, doctors, mothers, lawyers, all watching to see how justice would be served. The trial of the decade had begun, and in the heart of Cleveland, a family waited for one word: guilty. January 2010, the trial of Yazid Essa officially began. 5 years, 2 continents, one body buried in Cleveland, one fugitive dragged from Beirut. Now, face to face with justice. The room was silent, the press cameras clicked, and the man who poisoned his wife finally stood trial. The question wasn't whether she died, it was why. Yazid's defense team came armed with doubt. No fingerprints, no video, no confession. They painted a picture of Rosie as emotional, impulsive, even unstable. And the pills? Anyone could have tampered with them, they claimed. But jurors weren't just watching evidence. They were watching him. And when they looked at Yazid, they didn't see grief. They saw calculation. And then Rosie's brother-in-law took the stand. Firas Essa, Yazid's own blood. He testified that Yazid confessed, that he slipped the poison into Rosie's pills himself, that he had even joked about it, that it was easier than divorce. One moment of silence followed, and then a ripple through the courtroom. The jury didn't need science. They had something stronger, a confession. from within the family. Next came the other women, the nannies, the mistresses. The life Yazid tried to hide now played out in full view. One said he promised to marry her. Another claimed he joked about getting rid of his wife. Every word struck like a match, burning the lie of the loving husband. He didn't kill for love, he killed for freedom. But freedom has a cost. It all came down to this. The prosecution stood tall. He didn't lose his wife, he took her life. With science, with silence, with intent. The defense countered. Circumstantial, no direct proof. And then, the courtroom fell silent. 12 jurors, one verdict, and Rosie, waiting for justice. The courtroom held its breath. Yazid didn't flinch. He had lied. He had fled. But now 12 strangers would decide if he would finally fall. The judge looked up and spoke. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of aggravated murder. A gasp, a cry, a justice delayed, finally delivered, and the man who once walked free in Lebanon now stood condemned in Ohio. The sentence was swift, life in prison, no parole for 20 years, no more private jets, no more nannies, no more secrets, just bars, a bunk, and time. Time to think, time to rot, time to remember the woman who trusted him with her life and was repaid with cyanide. Next came the other women, the nannies, the mistresses. The life Yazid tried to hide now played out in full view. One said he promised to marry her. Another claimed he joked about getting rid of his wife. Every word struck like a match, burning the lie of the loving husband. He didn't kill for love, he killed for freedom. But freedom has a cost. The world watched. A doctor turned killer, a marriage turned murder plot, and a justice system stretched across oceans. The Essa case became a symbol of what happens when charm hides cruelty, when power protects poison, and when one woman's death becomes a rallying cry for every voice silenced too soon. Now he wakes to steal, sleeps to silence, and eats behind bulletproof glass. Yazid Essa is inmate A678112. Not doctor, not husband, just a number. And in that cell, he lives with the only thing that matters now, the truth, that he could have walked away, but instead, he chose murder. Rosie's death wasn't just a local tragedy. It sparked a national conversation about trust, about domestic betrayal, and about what monsters look like in real life. She was a nurse, a mother, a wife, and her killer, the man who slept beside her. The message was loud. Evil doesn't always knock at the door. Sometimes it kisses you goodbye. What kind of mind plots death? With a vitamin bottle? Experts called him a narcissist, a control freak, a man who saw his wife not as a partner, but as a problem to be solved. He didn't snap. He planned, calculated, smiled. This wasn't rage. It was logic twisted into murder. And in his world, freedom was worth a life. After Rosie's case, others came forward. Wives who felt unsafe, friends who remembered odd details. Rosie's death wasn't just a murder. It was a mirror, a reflection of what love can become when mixed with entitlement, deception, and cowardice. Because the people who say, "I love you," can also be the ones who plan your funeral. In the years that followed, Rosie's name became more than a tragedy. It became a mission. Scholarships, shelters, awareness campaigns about hidden abuse. Her kids, strong, resilient, carried her light forward. Because though she died from betrayal, she lived through compassion, and in every life she touched, she still breathes. We tell these stories not for entertainment, but for remembrance, for the Rosies of the world, whose voices were silenced, but whose names still echo. Justice isn't an ending, it's a beginning, a reminder that love must never be blind, and that trust must always be earned. This was the story of Rosie Essa. She was more than a victim. She was a mother, a sister, a fighter, and now she belongs to history.